Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's virtual tour of intentional communities. My name is Cynthia. I'm so glad you're here. I'm just gonna change my name so that you can have that on your screen. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, welcome, folks. This is our October edition of the virtual tour of intentional communities. I mentioned my name is Cynthia. I'm going to be your host today, calling in from Vermont, where I also live at an intentional community called Headwaters Ecovillage. And today is a super sunny autumn day. The leaves are just gorgeous this time of year. Feeling really grateful that I get to live in this community and share about communities with all of you, whether you're thinking about finding a community to join or starting a community. I really hope that you get some value out of today's session. And of course, many thanks to our wonderful presenters for taking the time to share with us. So here we are, virtual tour of intentional communities. This month we have Ecovillage at Ithaca in New York. We have Walnut St Cooperative in Eugene, Oregon. And we were going to have La Cité Ecologique. And I'm really sorry to share that unfortunately our presenter, Nebezna, who's also a good friend of mine, she's sick today. So she's unable to present. We're going to try to get her to come for a future talk. And if we have time, I'll run through and share a little bit about La Cité because it's a community I've been to multiple times. It's a really special place, and I just want to give you a glimpse into what this community is about. So yeah, I'm sorry, folks, about that, and we'll try to get them on for another event. This is an event that's actually a joint production between FIC, the Foundation for Intentional Community, and an organization that I run called Community Finders, which is really geared towards helping people who want to find an existing community to join, getting them linked up with resources and communities that are a fit for them. So this event, some of you are here as part of the Community Finders Circle. So hello to all of you. And if you're curious to learn more about our programs, you can check them out at communityfinders.com. I also just want to take a moment here as we're getting towards the end of the year. We're kind of entering into this more fundraising time as well. I want to put a big shout out to FIC for hosting programs like this and all the other amazing resources, including the free online communities directory, for doing all of that. As a nonprofit that's really run by a lot of dedicated people who, volunteer their time and energy to make this all happen. So if you have the ability and resources to donate, feel free to do that at ic.org/donate. We really appreciate it. So we are going to start off with Caitlin, who's here from Ecovillage at Ithaca, also a community not too far away from where I live and one I've gotten to visit a bunch, and really grateful that Caitlin is here so you can learn about this incredible community that's very large and has been around for a while and is kind of one of those like model communities in the movement. So welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you. So just want to check in and make sure my screen is showing.
Yep, looks good.
Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Cameron, and I am actually pretty new to Ecovillage at Ithaca. I've lived here a year, although I had lived in Ithaca before as a student. But I'm a resident at Ecovillage at Ithaca, but I also have the role of project director for our education and outreach arm that we now call Thrive. So I get to spend a lot of my time talking about Ecovillage and showing people around on tours. We host programs and things of that nature. But you're seeing here a relatively recent drone shot of Ecovillage at Ithaca. It's showing all three of our neighborhoods now, and 3-story farm, which is our latest farm in the front, although this is a couple years old, so it doesn't show their plantings yet. But this gives you a little bit of a sense for where we are and the terrain. We're in the Finger Lakes region in Ithaca, New York. So it's a hilly place, a beautiful place, four-season place. And we were founded in 1991. And in addition to being a co-housing community, where there's that focus on social connection and supporting each other, sharing resources, we're also an eco-village. So as Cynthia said, trying to be a model for social, economic, environmental issues, especially as they relate to the built environment. So I'll show our approach to that. So as I mentioned, we're both an eco-village and co-housing. Those two things don't always go together. And we're located 2 miles from downtown Ithaca. The red box there is generally our property, and we're on the West Hill. So downtown Ithaca is down in the flats at the base of Cayuga Lake. Cornell University is a big presence in Ithaca. It's over there on the East Hill, and also Ithaca College is on the South Hill. So we have a very particular context of being in a college town, being very close to a vibrant and active small city, city of about 30 to 35,000 people. And it was actually quite intentional to try to place our eco-village as close as we could to the downtown to be able to access jobs, schools, services, resources, all of those things. So that's one thing that maybe sets us apart from other eco-villages. And the land where we are in the 1900s was farmland that had been eventually abandoned and become fallow. And there was a proposal for a pretty typical American suburban development on this property. It would have accommodated 150 homes on these 1-acre lots, single family detached houses, cul-de-sacs, all of this. And a lot of zoning codes in our country have these ratios of allowing up to 90% of land to be built and keeping 10% open. So the founders of Ecovillage at Ithaca were aware that this development had been proposed, and fortunately it didn't go forward. But one of the ways we try to be a model is that we wanted to flip that paradigm and show a different way of accommodating almost as many households, but in a way that uses the land differently, more responsibly, one could argue. So we have our own zoning code that we had to develop with the town to be able to build the way we wanted to build, but we wrote into that zoning code restrictions for ourselves. So we stipulate that we can't exceed 10% lot coverage or built area on our property. We have approximately 170 acres at this point. It was a little larger than that, and we've sold off bits and pieces here and there, but approximately 170 acres. We're now up to 100 homes. The original vision was for 5 neighborhoods to be up to 150 homes, but after the 3rd neighborhood, it was kind of the sense of the community that was large enough, and that they didn't want to keep going with more neighborhoods. We also have 4 farms on the property. We have some land that's in conservation. We have quite a bit of trails and woods and different habitats, and several ponds as well. Some of those are irrigation ponds for the farms, and some of them are more recreational or for the resident use. Here's another view of our property. So it shows you our 3 neighborhoods, quite densely built. So there's Frog, which is 1st residential group, Song, which is 2nd neighborhood group, and Tree, which is 3rd residential eco-village experience. And this also labels 3 of our farms, and then that 4th farm is down at the bottom. It's not labeled. So I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. Our first neighborhood was built in the mid-90s. It has 30 homes. And many of you probably know there's a recommendation for communities. 30 is kind of the maximum number of households recommended for communities. And so we're kind of in that range. We currently have about 215 residents, as I mentioned, 100 households. So this is our first original neighborhood, and 30 of the homes are here. This is an older photograph, as you can probably tell. The second neighborhood was built in the early 2000s. You can see here the aesthetics of that neighborhood are quite different. Each neighborhood, as they've developed, have taken a different approach to the built character, how much space is left in the common areas between the homes. And in the case of the second neighborhood, which is also 30 homes, they're mostly custom designs. So there was sort of a building envelope maximum that was set, and then people could develop the homes how they wished, generally speaking, within those envelopes. So it's a little less standardized compared with the first and third neighborhoods. The third neighborhood was completed almost 10 years ago. And this is, as I mentioned, there's sort of an incremental approach to be more and more sustainable. So you can see here heavy use of solar panels and solar hot water. This neighborhood has a mix of single-family home, detached single-family homes, some duplexes, and also our common house in this neighborhood has 3 floors of residential above. So that's something else that's unique probably about our community, is there's a mix of different types of housing. We are co-housing, which means that each family or each household has their own private home. And those homes tend to be on the smaller side compared to the typical American home. And of course, the concept is that you have all this shared amenity, shared open space, the common houses, that are where the social connection happens, but also it makes having the smaller home manageable. So some characteristics I just want to share that went into the design of our community. So we were very conscious about dense building. Again, this is meeting the social engineering, if you will, around having proximity and social interaction with each other. Although I noticed in this photo, there are actually no people, which is not maybe the best example, but these all have all the neighborhoods are densely built with duplexes or very closely spaced. That also helps us conserve land for these other uses that I mentioned. All of the buildings in our community must use passive solar design, meaning in the Northern Hemisphere, you have a southern orientation and you have your south wall is where the most glazing or windows are happening, and that helps reduce the amount of electricity and resources you're using, because you're taking advantage of the sunlight for natural lighting, for heating the spaces, and that sort of thing. We also do have quite a bit of active solar systems. You can see here in the second neighborhood, there are individual systems on people's roofs. The other 2 neighborhoods do also have community solar arrays, but being in Ithaca, which can be a pretty cloudy and sometimes wintry, snowy place, we are not able to be off the grid. So we are tied to the town utilities, and we're not able to be self-sufficient when it comes to energy production with the solar. We also have very high efficiency buildings, very thick walls, highly insulated walls. This is that common house with the residential above that I mentioned in tree. And that's a LEED platinum building, for example. So that's another example of when each neighborhood was being designed and built, what were the best practices, the best materials and methods to be as efficient and sustainable as possible. That third neighborhood is also was designed to passive house standards, which was originally a German system of design where it's very simple building design to again to be highly efficient when it comes to energy use. And so a handful of these homes are certified passive house buildings, and in some cases some of these homes are able to be net zero or net positive as well, which means that the house is producing as much energy as the occupants are using. We have a common house in each of the three neighborhoods. This is the common house for the first neighborhood, Frog. You see the solar array there that powers about half the electricity needs for that building. There's outdoor dining space there. Our shared spaces include a common kitchen, dining area, sitting room, laundry facilities, playroom, guest rooms. In some cases, there are office spaces, and some extra things like in one case, a sauna, a mat room, game room, library, these different kinds of shared amenities. Another feature we have is pedestrian streets. This is the inside of the Frog neighborhood. We don't allow cars to the interior of the neighborhoods, again, making them safer, more socially interactive. The third neighborhood especially had a goal around accessibility and aging in community. That's an important topic that gets discussed a lot lately. So that is related to the design of the homes themselves. All these homes have full bedrooms and ensuite bathrooms on the ground floor, and they're accessible from the ground floor. They're not elevated entries, and you can see here there's paved paths that are graded so they can be accessible. I mentioned we have 4 farms on our property, and West Haven Farm was actually the first thing built on our property back in, I think, 92 or 93. And that's one of the first CSAs in New York State. And that's still in operation. It's new owners who happen to be my neighbors here in Frog. And so they're primarily produce, so vegetables and some fruit. There's also the 3-story farm, which is a regenerative agriculture, permaculture, agroforestry model. They're really treating that as a demonstration project at this time to show how we could return nut crops into the diet and different ways of farming in this region. Groundswell is actually a nonprofit farm, and they are an incubator and a teaching farm. And I can say more about that if there are questions about that. And then the 4th farm is a berry CSA farm. So it's both a UPIC and a CSA, which is kind of a unique model, but they specialize in different kinds of berries. We also have a community garden in each of the neighborhoods. There are many people who grow their own food in the community gardens in their backyards, and also patronize the farms on our property. So that's has always been an important tenet of our design. We also try to provide opportunities for nature connection. We have the ponds, trails, all these great windows. So we're very connected to the seasons, to, the wildlife around us. We also, as I mentioned, have some alternative energy happening, including the solar arrays. We also have a unique situation in the first neighborhood, Frog, with energy clusters where the energy systems have been ganged up. So you see that tower there, that's a sort of a utility closet that houses the meters and the utility systems for up to six or 8 homes. And so they're sort of shared, and the systems run through the crawl spaces. And that's a way of, it was somewhat economical at the time, but it also means if we need to upgrade or maintain those systems, it's fewer systems to have to keep track of. I would say transportation is still not optimal in terms of being sustainable. We do have fairly high car usage, being up on a hill, being in a 4-season climate. But we have gotten, many families are able to be down to one car. You see here one of the parking areas that's sort of on the outside of the Song neighborhood. We also have informal car share that happens. Some people use electric assist bikes to get around. And things of that nature. But the neighborhoods are very close to each other, so mostly to get around within the village, people are walking. We have a lot of the common cultural practices you might find in co-housing. So we have community meals up to 3 times a week. Each neighborhood tries to host one a week. Here is an older photograph of an event that used to be called Guys Baking Pies. That would happen in August when the wild berries were ripe on our property, and people would go and harvest them, and we'd have sort of a celebration around that. We also, of course, have participatory governance. 2 of the neighborhoods use consensus. The 3rd neighborhood is now using sociocracy. Each neighborhood is its own governance structure, and each neighborhood is also a cooperative. So the legal entity, which is something you can do in New York State, is using the cooperative model. We also have 2 other levels of governance. So we have a village association that manages and maintains infrastructure like our roads that are used by all villagers and neighborhoods. And then we also have EVI Inc., which is our land holding entity. It's a nonprofit with a board, and they really manage and make decisions around the use of the land that's not a part of the neighborhoods. We also have a work requirement, or an expectation, I should say, of 2 to 4 hours a week for residents to participate. So much of what happens in our community is by village skill and knowledge. Most of what we're doing is volunteer labor, whether it's serving on a board or in governance or building things such as this bridge here. I'm almost done. I just wanted to point out, we do have people who have run businesses on our property, but we are primarily a residential community. The one exception is Gourdlandia. You see some folks making items with gourds. That is our only real commercial space on the property. But of course, we have people who use those office spaces, have their own businesses, or have therapy businesses, or work remotely, or the whole range of what you would expect. But we don't have jobs. The Ecovillage does not generate jobs within our community. And then, of course, it's important to encourage certain behaviors. So we have systems like composting, recycling center, reuse, encouraging a culture of reuse and sharing. We have a reuse room, we have clothing swaps. Of course, there's a lot of emails every day about, in search of this, or I can offer that. So certainly an awareness around consumption and what we're using in terms of resources. So just the last couple slides. So we have been around a while now. I think some of the reasons for our success is that we have a shared concern around environmentalism, that we've always had a goal of being a demonstration project and sharing what we're learning and doing, and have a capacity to do that. I think it's also distinct that the community chose at the beginning to be a mainstream housing community, to try to show a way of building sort of middle-class mainstream housing, but in a different way. So it's easy for a lot of people to imagine themselves in this kind of community. It's not too far a stretch for people. And we continue to work on things like accessibility. And I think the co-housing model is a great balancing between privacy and community. And then, we're not perfect. We're not a utopia. There are things we could do better. This is actually an image from 100-Fold Farm in Gettysburg, where they have a living machine gray water system. We do not have anything so cool. So, we could probably be doing better on those fronts, increasing our off-grid and renewable energy. We could probably be doing more around food storage and self-sustaining food systems, transportation I mentioned. And we do have conversations internally about affordability and diversity and those kinds of things. So it's a ever evolving situation. So if you're interested in diving deeper with us, we have a couple of books about our community. We also occasionally have experience weekends where you can come and have immersive experiences. The next one is in November. You can go to the Thrive website to learn more about that. And you can always follow us on socials, connect with me. The contact email is there. Whenever I travel, I like to visit other communities. So I'm going to be in Nevada, California, and Washington State in November, December. So if anyone wants to connect with me to visit your community, I would love to do that. I think it's important for us to all learn from each other. So I will stop there.
All right, beautiful.
Sorry if
Thank
I
you
ran
so
over,
much.
Cynthia.
No worries, no worries. I think just because we have two communities, it's fine to be a little more spacious, and we can also be spacious with the Q&A portion. Really, really appreciating you sharing all that and all the beautiful photos. And I want to encourage folks to really take Caitlin up on this offer to join some of the educational programs at Ecovillage at Ithaca. And I wonder too, are you still doing your tours? Are
We do a
those
lot of tours. Yep, very much so. That's a big way that people visit us and learn from us.
good?
Mhm.
So yeah, folks, you don't only have to watch online, you can actually go to Ecovillage at Ithaca and walk around and meet some of the people and see all of this firsthand. It's truly, I know you said like trying to be a model, of course, it's always like a process, but it's really impressive what has been created there.
It's a great place to live. I can't imagine really living any other way at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right, so we have some questions here. Okay, let's see. Let's start. Do you have openings right now or a waiting list?
So it's a very popular place. We get I would say a couple hundred people a year who go through the membership process. We don't have an official waiting list, so it's not a first come, first serve situation. Um, but it's not predictable when we'll have openings, homes for sale or rentals. So if one is interested, then we encourage you to go to the Living Here page of our website and explore the membership process, and watch our rentals and sales page. That's where you'll see what's available. So it's very situational. It can vary quite a bit.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I can imagine it being a very popular place to.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I had posted that website earlier. I'll repeat it, ecovillageithaca.org. All right. Let's see. There was a question here about schools. What do kids do who live in
Yeah.
the community for education?
Sure, we have a mix. So the Ithaca school system is considered pretty good. So we do have some that are attending the public school system, and a couple of I think now New York State requires buses for anyone who asks for it, depending regardless of what school you're going to. But we have high school students and middle school students that get buses. There's some carpooling to the Montessori and Waldorf schools. There's a charter school downtown called New Roots that one of our residents actually founded. And then there are a couple of folks that do homeschooling. So it's a mix. We don't have any schools on site.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right. Oh, this is a good question. Do you get involved with Ithaca Hours, which is, I guess, the local currency?
Yeah, so unfortunately Ithaca Hours doesn't exist anymore. I don't remember exactly when they ended it, but yeah, I mean any Ithacan could have participated in that, but we do not have our own Eco-Village currency. Ithaca Hours was like a local currency system.
Gotcha.
uh, way back, or not way back, it was until pretty recently.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, folks did participate in that, but
Oh.
no more.
Oh, that's too bad. All right. And then there's some questions here regarding COVID and any COVID policies that you have implemented or still have implemented at this time.
At this point, it's really opened up. I think I believe there are no more restrictions except that for community meals, we still ask the first 10 minutes of the meal to be masked out of consideration for folks who are still being, who are sensitive around viral issues. So that's more of like a request at this point. I would say COVID was quite challenging for this community. I wasn't here personally at the time, but I hear from folks that it was divisive at times, what was the right policies around using the common houses or masking. Not everyone agreed about how to go about that. I would say the other impact is that many of our meetings are still on Zoom or online, and things of that nature, where it affected our culture a little bit in that way, and that's still around. So yeah, that's kind of the nutshell version of what's going on
Mhm.
for COVID right now.
Yeah, I can imagine there's a lot there. Yeah, that was one of the questions, how COVID had affected your community life. So I hear about.
Yeah, and it created some trauma. Depending on, I mean, there were people who felt um alienated because of their views on vaccination or not vaccination. There was definitely a loss of interaction and sense of community when people can't come together and eat together, celebrate together. Um, of course, most all of us experienced that isolation. So I would imagine being here was still less isolating than if you were somewhere else. But yeah, it certainly had an impact. And there were people who moved away, or there was sort of transition that happened because of just the way COVID impacted some of those social connections, or brought out things for people.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yep, I can imagine, especially with such a large community, how that, such a
Mhm.
diversity. And I'm curious, we'll hear from you all at Walnut Street Co-op about how, COVID, what happened with COVID in your smaller community. All right, let's see. There's still a bunch of questions. I'm gonna have to, Caitlin, when we're done, I'm gonna have to direct you to the Q&A box. But
Okay.
let's see. Let's do, actually, I was just speaking with Nikki Ann Freiberg of Earth Haven Ecovillage, and she shared that a lot is coming up right now around dogs in their community. And so we have a question here about your pet policy. So I'd love to hear about what's going on with pets.
So we like to say that the pets, parenting, and parking are often the hot topics, right, in community, a lot of places. We do have a pet policy. Some of it was controversial at the time. Um, Anyone can have, any pet they like in their own home. We do have restrictions for outdoor cats. So we have we allow 2 outdoor cats per neighborhood. Dogs, we request dogs be on leash around the residential areas, but once you get sort of further beyond, they're allowed to run free. We also have a couple areas that are informally used like dog runs. Actually, one of our solar arrays is fenced in, and that's used like a dog run. We have also, people can have livestock for personal use, not for commercial use. So we've had people who had sheep. We had someone who kept a horse here at one point, and we also now have a couple of flocks of chickens. So
That's great. That's
yeah.
great. Good. All right. Well, I will point your attention towards the chat. Looks like you
Okay.
got an offer on your upcoming trip to visit a community,
Oh, great. Okay,
Commons Co-housing in
great.
Davis, California. So
Yeah,
yeah,
which I used to live in the Bay Area, but I never made it to Muir Commons, so that would be great.
yeah. Ah,
Thank you.
good, good. I love, yeah, that's what I do. Whenever I'm traveling somewhere, I'm always like, what other communities can I visit on the way or nearby? Yeah. And I also wanted to highlight there was a comment from Emily earlier when you were sharing how one version of the future of Ithaca could have been this massive suburb. And she's like, I live in one of those suburbs, and it's so evident how inefficient a use of space it is. And so it's
Mhm.
really just inspiring to see the land use and all of the other things that you're doing there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up in a suburb like that, and I have a background in architecture and city planning, so I think a lot about these things too.
Yeah.
Thanks for that comment, Emily.
Yeah, great. All right, good. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin.
Sure.
And folks, there's a lot of information on the Ecovillage at Ithaca website, so I encourage you to go there to see if there's more that you can get to answer your questions. And now we will turn to Walnut Street Co-op in Eugene, Oregon. We have Emily and Laura Marie here with us. Thank you for your patience, and yeah, looking forward to learning about your community, which is again, a different model. And one of the things we're trying to do with this program is just really showcase the diversity of communities and ways of doing it. So go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming us. We're going to get our slides going.
Okay. You see the cat slide?
Yes, very cute.
Okay, great.
Great. Walnut Street. We're a housing co-op in Eugene, Oregon, on Kalapuya lands. We've been going for 20 plus years. This property is a beautiful, large, rambling craftsman. It had been one home and was turned into a triplex and was untriplexified. So it has 2 kitchens, 2 porches, 9 bedrooms, a trailer, a bike shed. We have a little library and gardens and yards. We're just to the east of the University of Oregon, and there are 12 people who really live here now at the moment. But there's 2 who are away on trips, and there are 3 cats, Rose, Mo, and Mr. Pie.
This is just an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We'll start with some introductions and then talk about how the house operates and some challenges and strengths, as well as what our membership process looks like.
Yeah, so I'm Laura Marie. I've lived here for almost a year. I'm very charmed by this wet biome. It's a cloudy, foggy day today, as you could probably tell by how dark we are in our video. But yeah, I had previously been in the desert in Nevada, so this is pretty much the opposite. This is the 3rd intentional community I've lived in. I love community as a place to resist capitalism and interdepend. And I list on the slide some of my interests: zines, art, ecstatic dance, disability justice, fat liberation, radical mental health, cooking. And that embroidery that you see there in the art is a self-portrait of myself as a bison.
I'm Emily. I have lived here for a little over 6 years now. I'm originally from Wisconsin, and prior to this, I lived in another co-op for 1 year in Iowa City. And that is what drew me to seek out another co-op. I'm on the board at Walnut Street Co-op. We have a board made up of housemates, and I do lots of administrative things for the house. I have a cat, Rose, see my picture. I do lots of reading, crafting, and I spend lots of time outdoors. It's a beautiful area here.
Yeah, so one of the greatest strengths of our community is the people who live here. We're ranging in age from 20 to 76 these days. Lots of activists, good handful of students, gardeners and landscapers. A lot of us are writers, artists, bakers of delicious bread, makers of beautiful pottery. Some of the great things about these people is we're mostly very curious and caring. There's a lot of wordplay in our community. That's a pleasure. Respect is the norm, and the sense of humor really helps us get through a lot of the challenges and everyday bumps in the road. The diversity here of genders, sexualities, and disabilities is one of our strengths also. It's very beautiful to be under the same roof with lots of different kinds of people and people I might not have spoken with otherwise if I hadn't been living with them.
One of my favorite parts of the co-op is our shared dinners. Each week we cook for each other. We have currently having 4 to 5 meals per week. We all contribute $180 per month to a shared food fund that we purchase foods for meals and staples for everyone to share. Other chores, we do our weekly chores, sort of like day-to-day things, cleaning up after yourself, cleaning the bathroom, etc. And then we also have each month we have a 3-hour work party where we work on projects together or do deep cleanings. And then once a month we have a thing called a floofy, which is a made-up word. It's in place of a meeting, so we have a person in the house decide what we do, and it's usually something fun or interesting. And yeah, those are our main things we do as a group and chores.
The gardens and yards here, we have a no spray organic style. There are raised beds, and then in one area and then in another area also, we have an herb spiral. There's a lot of composting. We have pear, apple, plum, fig, and cherry trees. We use some permaculture design concepts, and we have a greenhouse in the works. In this photo, you can see the little free pantry and little free library that we have out front, and the beautiful flags that we fly near one of the gardens also.
Our neighborhood. So as we mentioned, we are just a few blocks from the edge of the University of Oregon here. So our neighborhood is sort of a mix of like college rentals and then homes owned by middle-class type folks. An issue that has come up recently has been noise from nearby construction. Like the house across the street has been under construction for over a year, so there's pretty regular noise from there, so that can be disruptive. But there's also parks nearby that are very beautiful and peaceful. It's kind of a hilly neighborhood. We're also near the edge of town. Downtown is about 2 miles from here, but we can walk. There's grocery stores and restaurants in walking distance that are really nice. There's been concern in the past about the expansion of the university and worrying about it encroaching on our space and potentially wanting to like purchase this area. So that's something that we think about sometimes. So far, it's been fine. I think we're kind of far enough away, but something that comes up from time to time.
Yeah, the house values, I mentioned respect before. We use a consensus decision-making model. Delicious foods. There are some really good cooks here. This house is COVID cautious, so health is really important to us. And we have policies about guests and what people need to do before they can come visit. Another house value is making a better world. So we enjoy caring for parent earth, gardening and composting, eco-conscious decisions, lots of bikes, and in what we buy. Celebrating holidays and seasons is important to us here. We love celebrating each other's birthdays, and the Halloween decorations just went up. The equality is important to us of race, gender, sexual orientation, disability justice, and yeah, these are things we hold in common and are kind of unifying for our community. And that slide's just a flyer for a yard sale we had in spring.
Our main challenges as a house, with consensus, it sometimes makes decisions happen slowly. We'll talk about things over a meeting and might not come to a decision, so we'll have to take another meeting to talk about it. And there's lots of people in the house, so we have lots of different opinions on things, which is great, but also sometimes slows things down. The house is, I think, around 100 years old, so there's lots of quirks to it. Old windows means they're drafty. Basement is pretty often damp. In the Pacific Northwest, we get lots of rain. Like we have like summer and rainy season is my experience. And also with the old house, there's pretty regular maintenance needs that we have to work on. Another thing is clutter. It's actually been a thing that some people have come to the house and been like, there's too much clutter here, and have not want to join us after that. But some of us tolerate it, are okay with it. Yeah, this amount of people, things pile up, things get untidy, but yeah. Conflict and sharing power. Our goal is to be equitable, but there are sort of natural power imbalances with especially seniority in the house. We have people who've been here less, we have housemates that moved in like just a month ago, and then we also have a housemate who's been here for 20 years. So there's kind of this natural power imbalance there. That's, some people have a lot more history, understanding of house things and house culture. We also have a board that makes the bigger financial decisions. So those people have a bit more power and more responsibility. And then there's also, 10 to 12 different personalities. So that can sometimes be difficult, but it's something that we're always working on. And then disorganized information. We have had a lot of people over time and a lot of people who've done great work, but not all of the information on that work or information on house things are written down in an organized way. So sometimes newer people come in and don't know how to find something, or like where to find information on something. Yeah, those are things that we struggle with, but we work on.
Yeah, and some of our main strengths, the affordability is phenomenal. What we pay here for our rooms is like half or maybe even a third of what you might pay in Eugene for like a 1-bedroom apartment. So it's really wonderful that we can make choices in our lives that have more freedom, because we're not confined by needing to make a lot of money. Also, the intergenerational and queer trans diversity are beautiful here. The language genius with the puns. And in our kitchen, we have whiteboards that sometimes have beautiful drawings or jokes that have been going for a long time. There's kindness and the sense of humor I mentioned before. The Little Free Library and the Little Free Pantry are really special because a lot of different people pass by, like the middle-class people who have their houses, or the students who are passing by, or also the people who are lumpen who pass by looking for, something to eat. Then it's great that when sometimes someone will move out of somewhere nearby and put a whole bunch of stuff from their pantry in our little free pantry, and there'll be like a windfall of ingredients. Or sometimes I put like we're growing more chilies than we eat these days, so I'll put those in the little free pantry. And the books that are constantly circulating through the little free library, it's very fun to watch. But yeah, it's really a boon to the community here, to the neighborhood. The monthly community dinner that we have, we invite our friends who don't live here, and it's fun to decorate and cook for them. And we also make a point to invite people from the other communities that are nearby to try to get some of that collaboration. The fruit trees are beautiful and big, and those pears and apples, we grew a lot this year. Another main strength is that we've been going for 20 plus years, so we have a lot of precedent here to push back against, or to go with, or to revise, so that history is really rich and very valuable.
How to join. So we don't have any current openings, but if you are interested, you're welcome to send us an email. We have a wait list and we reach out to all those folks when we have an opening. Our application process includes inviting the prospective housemate to 3 dinners, a meeting, and an interview. After living here for 6 months, a housemate can ask to be on the board. And as mentioned, the board has more responsibility and a bit more decision making, especially financial decisions.
Yeah, thank you for learning about our community. And this picture shows the cats that are really running the show. Our email is there, and then our WordPress blog. And then that's our Instagram, Walnut Street Co-op, if you'd like to learn more about us or just follow all the fun that we have.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura Marie and Emily. Yes, those cats do run the show. They're so cute. Oh, great. Thank you for your presentation. Great. Well, I learned a new word, floofy.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna include that in the intentional community lexicon. So it's like when you're doing something fun instead of a meeting. Floofy. Love it. Good. All right. Well, we have a few questions, and I'll invite more questions to come in the Q&A box if possible, just so we can stay organized. Yeah, practical question about your waiting list to join your house. Do you have one? How long is it?
Yeah, we do have a waiting list. Typically we have like 10 to 20 people on it. I would say on average, in the time that I've lived here, we've had like 1 to 2 openings per year. And so we just send out an email to all the people on the waiting list at one time, because a lot of people have moved on or are no longer interested. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So folks, if you're interested, go ahead and join the waiting list. You can learn about new openings. Oh yeah, another new word was parent earth instead of Mother Earth. Nice. Thank you for highlighting that. Good. All right. Yeah, one of the questions I had to do with your amount of turnover as a community, especially such a long community, or community that's been around for such a long time. I don't know, you touched on it a little bit, but I could imagine that really being an interesting dynamic with some long-term residents and then a bunch of new people coming in and mixing things up. Like how do you handle that? I imagine you have a pretty good new membership orientation process of some sort.
I think that we handle it with a lot of love and curiosity. There's a tour that probably that is done by the person who's lived here the longest. So that tour, when my spouse Ming and I came to the community, it was so long and involved with so much information that we broke it up into 4 different tours. I think we had to learn how the sump pump works. I had to learn what a basement is for. Where I come from, I never had a basement. we had to learn about the different garages and the codes for things, and where are the light switches, where are the fire extinguishers. So it was wonderful to be blessed with this information. But I think mostly a lot of it happens one-on-one, a lot of it happens at the breakfast table and the dinner table. And then just there's like a goodwill and an assumption of good intent that I think gets us through a lot of the beginning stages. But yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to suddenly be in this living, thriving, changing thing. So I think the patience and respect and the tours get us pretty far with that.
Great. And another question for your board members, is that membership made up of current residents? Or do you have outside people who don't live in the community who are board members?
Our board is current residents. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And that's the body that practices the consensus, or the board is just for financial decisions, or?
The board mainly does financial decisions and like maintenance things. The entire house does consensus. We have a weekly meeting, and we try to do consensus at those decisions.
Yeah, great, good. All right, well, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you all around for your presentations. That was Lynn says, excellent presentations. Many thanks to you all. And I think we have still some time if anyone in the audience has questions that might be relevant for both of the communities we have on. I did want to circle to Caitlin with a question, but feel free, folks, if you want to put those in the Q&A box and we can just have more general conversation. So Caitlin, did you touch on decision-making there at?
Very briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first two neighborhoods use consensus, and the third neighborhood transitioned to sociocracy. So we have both going on within the community.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
And both models are working, you would say?
Yeah, yes. I think that there are, in the consensus-based neighborhoods, there have been a lot of recent conversations about whether to transition to sociocracy. And I think that we're also kind of revisiting our policies and procedures around governance, mostly to remind ourselves of those things, but recognizing a lot of it has been kind of oral history. There's not a lot that's been solid sort of record keeping in written form. And so we've got a task force in the first neighborhood that's trying to document how consensus works. And that's a starting point for the neighborhood to potentially propose changes if we want to switch to sociocracy, if there are adjustments we want to make to how we're operating under consensus. So I think that there are a few challenges. I think we're still raising questions around we do have some households where the homeowners, I say owners in quotes because we're shareholders technically as cooperatives, but the homeowners are not present in the neighborhood. I think that's a challenge when you have such a large community. You don't know everyone as well and as intimately as you might at Walnut Street. And so sometimes the conscious communication isn't always there, to put it diplomatically. And especially that can happen for the few homeowners who are not physically present all the time. So that's been part of the conversation lately of, can non-resident shareholders serve on governance, be part of boards and committees? Should we have limitations to the amount of time someone can spend away from the community, because it's kind of coming back to how we care for each other, how we talk to each other, how well we know each other. It has had an impact on how well the governance is working.
Yeah, I could imagine that completely. Right. And I also heard a theme in what you just shared that I also heard from Walnut Street, this piece around documenting what has happened before, like the history of a community and what previous members came up with who put a lot of time and thought into some of these topics already. Yeah, any good solutions around that? Anything you've discovered, both of you, all of
I
you?
think we're still working on that, so I don't know that we're exemplary on that front right now.
In our community, we have Google Drive, Google Docs, an internal listserv. We have paper things. We have stuff on the wall in the kitchen. We have our own wiki. We have we have 3 websites, 2 Instagrams, a Facebook. So all of these places could have different, and some things seem to be only in people's heads. So that's very challenging, and we're up for it, but some of the things are very technical. With I mentioned the sump pump. I'm not even sure what a sump pump is. I know what it does and I know what it sounds like when it's going, but other people clear that filter. So it's nice that there's some specialization, and some people, yeah, have the certain knowledge. What if they disappeared? Whoa, what if we could be in some trouble there? So my desire would be to help get the information in a more unified way, and maybe eliminate some of the lesser used places that information is stored. But again, the turnover is part of that, or so and so who usually takes care of such and such is busy right now for a while, or so then trying to come together to store that information in a way that can be accessed easily is quite a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. Have you thought of transitioning to sociocracy? Has that even come up, or are you're going with consensus for now, maintaining that?
We've never talked about that since I've lived here. It's always been consensus.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. There was a question from Emily in the Q&A box about, yeah, curious, Caitlin, if you know, like, was sociocracy like, oh, we want to try something different, or was there like a real challenge with the consensus process in that neighborhood that decided to make a shift?
I don't know the full history why Tree chose sociocracy. I think it's somewhat a factor of sociocracy wasn't really around till fairly recently, so that's a factor. We use sociocracy in Thrive. So Thrive is the small organization that I'm the director of. It's our education and outreach arm. So I became familiar with sociocracy through that as well. And so I know a little bit about both. I think that sociocracy seems especially helpful in giving agency or decentralized decision making and empowering smaller circles and subgroups to get things done. So that seems to make sense in community where everything's happening, kind of on a volunteer committee basis anyway. And I think the other advantage people are considering is sort of the more democratic rounds process of giving people more equal voice, because there can be instances of people dominating, or even bullying, or that kind of behavior can happen. So in some cases, the consensus process, we've facilitators like to use rounds anyway, so there might be a little bit of a hybrid, an influence of sociocracy coming in to those
Gotcha.
processes. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's good. And I did
And
put in the
Cynthia,
chat. Oh,
Cynthia, could I mention something about that too?
please.
I wanted to say that the volunteer basis that's being mentioned, it means to me that a lot of us have these really absorbing projects that we're really involved with. Or then some of us are going to school and going to work, and different people, have, there's a, I don't know if we define how many hours per week we're expected to contribute. When we do our chore check-in, I think it's a special system. But if we're giving, 2 to 5, or maybe a little more sometimes, hours per week, and then we're doing that to maintain like what we have, and it seems like transitioning to another model of decision making would require like a lot of effort, like a lot of like figuring stuff out, making sure everybody understands it, making sure everybody wants it. And in some ways, we're pretty focused. A lot of us are focused on these other things we're doing. So in order to make that type of investment into another decision-making style for us, I think that would require like a lot of energy that we haven't prioritized yet. So like there's so many things to prioritize with the maintenance or with the information storage or whatever, that that hasn't been a priority yet for us. Thanks.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense for sure. Yep. And if it's not broken, why go through all this energy to try to fix? Yeah, good. All right. Well, I put a link to sociocracyforall.org, and that's an organization that provides educational resources specifically for intentional communities about sociocracy. Oh, and I think Neil put in the chat, upcoming communities focused sociocracy conference. Oh, cool. Oh, nice. November 18th. I'm going to check that out. Great. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, good. Yeah, and briefly, Lucette, sociocracy, it's a form of dynamic governance. So it's the idea or the aim is to make decisions more quickly and efficiently while hearing all voices. But it's also like can be used for organizational structure, can get really complex. So I'll just refer you. They have some great short little videos on sociocracy for all on that website. Great. And another question for Walnut Street that we got, are you connected with other intentional communities that also have a focus on accessibility and social justice? Are you connected with other communities with that focus or not? Or
A lot of the individuals in this community form alliances and have relationships with people in other local communities. And those communities, some more than others, are focused on social justice, and the disability justice seems rarer to find around here, but hopefully becoming more and more common. There was a community in town recently that held a disability justice workshop that 4 people who live here attended, and it's always helpful to come together to share those informations. But a lot of the communities around here have a focus, like there's Lost Valley in Dexter, which is an eco-village, and then there's Maitreya, which we have somewhat of a relationship with, that has a lot of beautiful building styles and beautiful things going on there. And then Dumas, 2 members of our community went for their honey harvest a few months ago and helped with that, bringing materials and putting in work. And then, they delivered a jar of honey to us, and then we made jam with that honey. And I don't think we've given yet some of that blueberry jam that we made with blueberry lemon balm jam that we made with berries we picked, the lemon balm we grew, and the honey that they gave us. So there are these beautiful connections that form, but not so much those emphases. I don't think. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. Oh, that's so great. What was the last community, Duma? I think you
Mhm.
mentioned. That's how you say
Yeah.
it.
Duma, and then there's Maitreya, there's Lost Valley. What else? Oh, there's East Blair around here. We have some good friends in these places, but it's not like a formalized, yeah, it's not a very codified relationship. It's just individuals caring about individuals and then, inviting people to things. And some of us are on the local permaculture guild listserv, so we see each other's events on there too, or there's a signal chat for the local communities that a lot of us are on.
Okay, great. Good, good. I love hearing about the connections among communities. Caitlin, how about, I know that you're on a, personal journey of connecting with other communities, but, a collaboration or other, shared activities with other communities in your area.
Yeah, that's something that I'm working on, being relatively new to the movement. And I would say it's not only a personal journey, it's certainly related to my position with Thrive and the community. My interest especially is skill and knowledge sharing. Uh, I think that's something I would like to do more of, and I just don't have all of the personal connections yet that some of the more long-standing community members might have. But yeah, locally I've been connecting with, we have White Hawk, which is a newer eco-village not far away. And there's co-housing community just below us, adjacent to our property, that was started in the 70s, called Longhouse. It's quite small. It's only 9 households, I think. So yes, I've been connecting with them, trying to hold celebrations together or gatherings together, that sort of thing, and yeah, trying to meet once in a while to talk about what's going on for us. There are a couple of pocket neighborhoods that are being developed by a local person, that are kind of like co-housing light, shall we say, where they're quasi-intentional communities where they're trying to be a little bit, adopt some of these values and principles in a more urban, suburban context. So yeah, we have a few examples nearby, but still more to do.
Yeah.
In building those relationships.
Good, good. Well, I wrote down some of these community names that you all mentioned.
Yeah, you might invite them. You might invite them for a virtual tour.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Cynthia, I wanted to say that this place is very different from the community I lived in just previously. I was 7 years at a Catholic worker house in Las Vegas, where we were really focused on doing the works of mercy. And we had this like unifying factor of spirituality, even though we were not all Catholic or even all Christian, like the religious, the interfaith religious aspect and the work that we did really brought us together. So my spouse Ming and I, because Ming lived there too for those 7 years, have been thinking a lot about how this community here has less of that unifying force of the shared work and the shared religious focus. But here we have more freedom, and here like there seems to be like a different type of diversity when people are really doing separate projects. So I'm thinking a lot lately about like the strengths of having the unified thing or the strengths of having more freedom. But it's interesting because they're similar sizes, community, but having that shared work like gave a really different feel, like a really different flavor. And I'm really enjoying the freedom here and how we can see each other and kind of like give each other a different kind of space and a different kind of support where we're kind of like how much are you involved in another person's project is a lot more variable. And that's, to me, it's really a pleasure to learn about.
Yeah, very interesting insight. Yeah, that tension between the unifying aspects and the freedom. I think too, I've noticed communities that are more in the early days of formation or like building, that can be a really powerful unifier. And then later stages, more established, that gives more room for people to, I'm experiencing that right now in the community where I live. where, the gardens are in place, everything's built, and then we can kind of have more time for our individual projects. So, yeah. Great. All right. Well, we're coming up on time. I just want to, make space here to really appreciate you all for taking the time to share and present. Thank you so much to everyone, our audience, everyone who's listening in. Thank you for all your wonderful comments in the chat and all those good questions. We're not going to have time to get to all of them, but they're really good ones. And please save them for our next session. I'm writing some down because there's some really good ones there about, how community handles health or dying issues or skill sharing. Really fantastic. And yeah, we're going to do this again next month. So it's always on the first Thursday of the month from 2 to 3:30 p.m. my time, Eastern time. And I do apologize again for not having Lesate. Everyone send some well wishes to Nebezna that she can heal quickly and join us for another virtual tour of intentional communities. And I thought it might be nice just to wrap up with a final question for each of you to answer, and then we'll send out our appreciations and go on our way. And I was thinking a good question, since all of you are relatively new to community. I know some of you have been at this for a few years, but you're more recently on this, the journey of what it was to transition from normal life into community life. And I wonder if you might share any advice for other folks who are here, who are on that journey of coming into finding or joining an intentional community, maybe trying to choose which one, or maybe going through the early days of membership in a community. Anything you want to share from your own experiences or what you've seen from other people walking that path. And yeah, popcorn, whoever wants to share first, go ahead.
I have a couple thoughts, both from my own experience and what I hear from others. I think people I know who've been here for 20, 30 years mention the importance of mindfulness or being open to working on yourself. If you're going to live in community, certainly we're not all perfect. We all have things to work on or improve on. And it seems in a community like ours where it's very self-selecting, right? People aren't voted in or voted out or these kinds of things. But people do come and go, and it's sometimes people who just aren't ready to work on some of these skills, or examine personal relationships might not be the best fit for them. But I mean, there's so many different communities out there too. For me, geography was huge. I choose to live without a car, and so being in a community where I could have a quality of life without a car was important. And I had lived in Ithaca before, so I knew the place. I knew it resonated with me, and what the place could offer. And it was important for me to be near a city, and those kinds of things. So I think it's really examining what you need for your quality of life. And I think it's fine too if it doesn't work out, or maybe we've had people who've moved to other communities to be closer to family, or as you go through different phases of life, that's not a failure per se, right? If you have to leave or it doesn't work out for you, it's just of course circumstances change, and I think that's important too, to keep that frame.
Thank you so much.
For me, I first joined a community when I finished school, and then I was moving to a new city, and I didn't want to live by myself. So I found a community and applied and got in, and it was a really great experience. I mean, I guess I haven't really lived a normal mainstream sort of life, because I went from college to intentional community. I mean, besides like growing up with my family, but I think now the things that I think are really important, besides what Caitlin said about like interpersonal relationships and self-awareness, I would say the two big things for me are openness to new experiences, openness to meeting new people, and to new ideas. I think that new people come in and have new ideas, and sometimes it's hard to like. Sometimes it's hard for me and for other people for change to happen. So when someone new comes in and wants something to change in the house, I think being open to that and allowing those things to happen is usually a positive thing. And the other thing is patience. I think especially in this house, the slow decision making and all the different personalities that we have different varying levels of relationships with. Patience is another good one to try to keep.
My favorite thing is probably ritual for holding us together. This house, like I mentioned, is having a lot fewer and a lot less that's unifying, but that freedom is so delicious. But one of the rituals that we have is circling before dinner. We hold hands and there's a squeeze that's passed around a circle. And that quiet moment together before the squeeze, that little beautiful, like 10 seconds before the squeeze, and then as it travels, where I feel like we're all getting grounded and feeling appreciation and love for the people who we're holding hands with. Like to me, like there can be conflicts and pain and frustrations of different kinds, but that circling moment is my joy and one of the things that keeps me in community. So I feel like I was born into a community of my family and my extended family and my neighborhood and my town. So, and I feel like there are all these levels of community all the time, like the Radical Mental Health Collective that I'm in, or other groups where I gather to make art or to sing or to dance. But to have these people we live with, to have these rituals, to me, that's the thing that keeps us from kind of like floating off in our own direction. So like just a few things, not necessarily lots of ritual like all the time, but that one is just so simple and so sweet. And I think it does a lot of good to have the gratitude of that moment.
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking that my community, we haven't held hands in a while. We got to do that. We got to stand in circle. It's so powerful. Great. All right. Thank you all so much again. Blessings on your work and your communities. Really good to spend time with each of you. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next month. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.